Good?
Good.
All right, let's try it. One of my favorite things to watch on TV is professional sports. Something we see year after year is players catching flack for something they did or did not do. One of my favorite players to watch is Odell Beckham Jr. Odell plays in the NFL. He's an outstanding athlete who is passionate about his profession. But sometimes that passion gets away from him.
Round one, fight. And his name is John C.
Something you may already know about Mr. Beckham is he has shown his weakness by giving in to the haters, by letting people get in his head. Odell's biggest weakness is not his hands, his speed, his route running ability. In fact, his biggest weakness isn't on the field at all. His biggest weakness is in his head. OBJ seems to feel the need to retaliate to every attack. And that kind of attitude results in not only him playing poorly, but also his team suffering because of it. Odell Beckham Jr., this incredible athlete, this freak of nature, was being shut down by other people who don't even play football, hating on his game, talking trash about him. I use Odell Beckham Jr. as an example because even though he has the potential of being one of the greatest receivers in NFL history, he could also end up ruining a legacy by reacting to every accusation, by responding to every word of hate sent his direction. In other words, his inability to deal with the haters inhibits his ability to perform in his professional career. In Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he talks about the idea of haters. He is saying that people will doubt your faith. They will hate your God, but you can't let that affect who you are and who you've been called to be. Jesus said this in Matthew. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Jesus said that when people hate us because we follow him, we are blessed, we are fulfilled. Jesus doesn't say if it will happen. He does say when it happens. In other words, it is only a matter of time before we have people confront us or dislike us for what Jesus says is good and true. If you believe, if you speak out for what is right, and you do your best to follow Jesus, people, haters, will come against you. Winston Churchill led England through World War II, and he is viewed as one of the greatest leaders of modern time. He had the right idea when he said this. You have enemies? Good. That means you stood up for something, sometime in your life. So here's the question. Has anyone ever said anything about your faith that was offensive or spoke directly against what you said? If so, you may be onto something. You're on the road to a blessed life. Now, we aren't looking to create enemies for the sake of having enemies. But when Jesus tells us to live a countercultural life, there are people who just don't like that. Jesus said we are blessed to have people who disagree with our faith. We are doing something right. But how do we live with these people? At our school, at work, or even at church? How do we handle haters? First, we must recognize the source. As Christians, when someone ridicules, makes fun of us for our faith, we have to understand that the problem isn't really against us, but it's against Jesus. It's about good versus evil. It says this in Ephesians. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. So, as you see, this is bigger than you and me. This struggle is as old as time, and it's part of our walk with Jesus. When we hear from the haters, we need to remember the true source of everything evil. Things people say, do, and think have all come from the same source. That source is Satan, the devil. In John, Jesus gives us a description of Satan. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. Jesus uses the word thief to describe the devil. At his root, he only wants to take everything good from you. Satan's only purpose is to destroy your life, and that includes people in your life, interactions at school, at church, or even at the movie theater. Satan tries to convince us that we must do something if someone says something we don't like. He tries to steal from us the joy and fulfillment that our faith in Jesus gives us every day. So, knowing that we are in a struggle and that we are under constant distraction, under constant scrutiny from an identified source, we must refuse to retaliate. In other words, because we know that this offense isn't actually against us, but it's part of a bigger battle, we must refuse to react. Why? Because if we react, if we retaliate, we have let them win. The Bible gives us some advice in Romans. Never pay back evil for evil to anyone. That's pretty simple, right? Maybe we can explain this by simple math. Let's say we live our life pretty optimistically. We believe that life is good most of the time. We walk around with a +1 value on life. Let's say someone says something negative about us. We'll give it a -1 value. If we retaliate equally, negatively, we have just added another -1 to the equation. See where we end up? With a negative outlook. So what happened? We didn't do anything to neutralize the problem, and we only made the problem worse. It's like the illustration I told you about last week. Do you use water to put out the fire, or do you use gasoline to fuel the fire? When we react, it's our choice. Gandhi once said this, "Nobody can hurt me without my permission." You see, Gandhi realized that the choice to be hurt and to react was his to make. Do you feel like you are in control of your reactions? If not, the next best step is to decide how you're going to react before there is ever a conflict, that you refuse to retaliate. Just remember what the Bible says, never repay evil with evil. So how do we not only neutralize the problem, but how do we begin to seek peace and actually solve the problem? How do we overcome evil? We show love. Our biggest commandment is to love God. Second to that, love people. Jesus was asked, "What is the most important commandment?" Jesus answered in Matthew, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." This is not optional or conditional, because true love isn't optional or conditional. Jesus is giving us the biggest tip he could ever give us. Love God and love people. Let's read again from Romans about this idea of overcoming evil. Romans 12:21 says this, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." We overcome evil with good. Let's check our math problem again to see what happens when we decide to overcome evil with good instead of retaliating with more evil. So here we are in our general +1 outlook on life. Someone does something negative to us, that's -1. Now look at the change here. We respond in a positive way instead of the negative response in the previous problem. Check out where we end up on the other side. Positive. The Bible describes this repaying evil with good as a means to not only finding peace, but driving away people who only want to get a reaction out of you. It says this in Proverbs, "If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you." You see, when we refuse to retaliate and we show love, the work is done for us. The evil intent to harm you or offend you turns on the person saying it. Now they are subject to their own words. The Bible says that it's like burning coals on their head. Ouch. The last way to deal with haters is embrace adversity. Embrace when people hate you? be glad when someone says something about you because of what you believe? Yep. Jesus said this in the Gospel of Matthew. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Why should we rejoice? Jesus explains it here. You should rejoice and be glad because your reward is in heaven. You should be glad because your pain on this earth is temporary. Heaven, the place Jesus promises to those who believe in him, is forever. It's eternal. The Apostle Paul summed it up well in 2 Corinthians. For a momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. You see, this life isn't forever. When we keep our eyes on Jesus, when we focus on eternity instead of only the right now, the momentary light affliction, what we experience pales in comparison to the joy and love we receive from following Jesus with everything we have. As the struggle between good and evil goes on around us and in us, remember what awaits you: peace, love, and a life spent in eternity with God. That's what awaits those of us who believe in Jesus and who put our faith in him. Remembering this gives us hope in the most hopeless situations. As we wrap up this 50 Days to a Blessed Life campaign, I pray that you take what Jesus said that day on the side of a mountain. You take the Beatitudes and you apply them to your life. If we want to truly be blessed, if we want to truly find fulfillment in our life, the things we talked about over these past 50 days should be pillars in our life. Remember, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn, the meek, those who hunger for righteousness, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, and those who are persecuted. Are you any of these things? The challenge of our life is constantly looking to be these things. Your journey can start today. God's blessing on your life awaits.